I am in Santa Fe, New Mexico, outside of the Museum of Colonial Spanish Art here on Museum Hill. So this is going to be pretty interesting. Let's go check this out. This is the only museum in the country dedicated to art from the Spanish colonial period in the Southwest, and focuses specifically on Hispanic New Mexican artwork. The museum is located inside a house-like Pueblo Revival style building, built in 1930 by John Gaw Weem, specifically for the Colonial Art Society's collection. The home-like setting of this art museum is fairly unique, especially with its Spanish Puebloan architecture. The main exhibition on right now is Trails, Rails, and Highways, how trade transformed the art of Spanish New Mexico. Trails have traversed the land of enchantment since prehistoric times. Trade routes utilized by different Native American groups connected Chaco Canyon with Cahokia Mounds in Illinois, and with present-day Mexico City. By the time of the Spanish settlement, several new routes were trailblazed, such as the Camino Real de Tierra Adentro from central Mexico to New Mexico, and the Spanish Trail, which connected Santa Fe with Los Angeles. Later on, there was also the Santa Fe Trail, connecting the newly independent United States with Santa Fe, and brought a variety of American, Mexican, French, and Spanish merchants together. These trails also brought in immigrants from a variety of nations and cultures, which is all reflected in the artwork from these time periods. This room is filled with more contemporary pieces which reflect Spanish colonial styles. That is a sculpture of Our Lady of Solitude. That is a leather bolsa or pouch made in the 19th century. One of the major trade items between the Puebloan and Plains peoples and the Spanish were animal hides that could be used to make several different tools such as pouches. These are all personal possessions similar to those brought up along the Camino Real by the Spanish colonists, like a fancy penita, which is a hair comb. There's an over 200-year-old traveling chest, and these are some Spanish paintings made in late 18th century New Mexico, many of them right here in Santa Fe, depicting different saints like Saint Raphael. These paintings, along with these other relics, would have been used in mission churches or in family dwellings. That is a hardwood sculpture of St. Anthony of Padua, made in 1700 Spain and traveled along the Camino to New Mexico. There's a Peruvian armchair and trunk, an embroidered bedspread on the right with an emblem of the Habsburg dynasty, and a crucifixion scene painted on an elk hide from the late 18th century made here in New Mexico. This is a Spanish board chest with some decorative elements. That is a portrait of an unidentified Mexican soldier who was 22 years old at the time, according to the description on this painting. That is an iron espuela, or spur, made in 16th century Mexico. The Spanish introduction of the horse to the Americas ensured the necessity for the blacksmithing trade. On the left is a copperplate engraving of Our Lady of Atocha, made in Madrid in 1786, and a Mexican portrait of San Jose St. Joseph. On the left is a Mexican painting of Our Lady of Candlemas, made in Mexico in honor of the candle wax makers and confection bakers guilds. And this is a portrait of Saint Paschal Baylon, a Franciscan who was nearly killed while debating French Calvinists in the 16th century. This is a magnificent painting of Our Lady of Light, made in 1750 Mexico. This painting is believed to have once hung on the altar of La Castrense, the military chapel that was on the Santa Fe Plaza in the 18th century. And when it was torn down in the 1800s, it was transferred to the Loreto Chapel until it closed in the 60s. These are all tin items that traveled along the Santa Fe Trail. Tin was a new medium that significantly affected the art of New Mexico during the time of Mexican independence. There's a cool Puebloan fireplace, and some 19th century carved saint figures. These are items that traveled along the Santa Fe Trail, the trail which opened up Mexican New Mexico to Missouri and the rest of the United States, and was also the way by which the United States invaded New Mexico territory during the Mexican-American War. On the right is a sculpture of St. Isidore the Farmer. While most of the artwork here is from northern New Mexico, this is a rare example of an active Santero tradition and tinsmithing in southern New Mexico. That is a wooden chest from the 18th century. and these are paintings on pine wood of saints from the 19th century. There is Saint Francis of Assisi, the patron saint of animals and nature. He has been historically popular in this beautiful region. And that is Our Lady of Sorrows, a classical scene showing the sorrow of Mary with 7 daggers piercing her heart. That is a German tin print of the Sacred Heart of Mary. These were common items and could even be considered souvenirs to come across on the Santa Fe Trail and later the Santa Fe Railroad. Trains started service to this region in 1880 and brought a plethora of new materials, mediums, and ideas rapidly to New Mexico. In the case are some items, including jewelry, brought to Santa Fe via railroad. The railroads did have an effect of diminishing demand for locally produced santos. Few local artists were now creating the religious figures which were still needed, especially by the penitent order, for their big passion play reenactments and self-flagellation. This is a recreation of a room in the home of Captain Manuel Delgado here in Santa Fe, before he passed away in 1815. This is what the home of a Hispano family may have looked like after Spanish reoccupation. While none of the furniture in here was likely his, the room has been recreated with period furnishings based off wills and estate inventories from the period. Those are some small 19th century Peruvian portraits with really cool frames. There's some jewelry, which is clearly very much Puebloan inspired and includes some turquoise. These are some more retro items which may have been found in some locations along good old Route 66 here in New Mexico, such as items which may have been sold at the classic trading posts. This back room was likely designed as a kitchen. It has some really nice tiling and some tin pieces. So that was the Museum of Spanish Colonial Art. A really interesting museum, and I really appreciate the unique take they had on it by focusing on the historic trails and routes in New Mexico. Please check out my other videos in Santa Fe, including the Museum of International Folk Art and the Wheelwright Museum of the American Indian, which are also up here on Museum Hill. And thanks for watching.